Next, I will give the floor to the distinguished representative of Fiji, Her Excellency Mrs. Nazhat Shameen Khan, Permanent Representative. You have the floor.
I would firstly like to congratulate the co-chairpersons and members of the Bureau on their election. My delegation assures you of our full cooperation and support with a view to achieving a successful outcome in the process leading up to the Third World Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction to be held in Japan in 2015. As a small island state, Fiji is highly vulnerable to the adverse impacts of climate change and other natural disasters. Both phenomena pose significant threats to the livelihood, the security, and the well-being of our people. Fiji has participated in a number of international and regional initiatives to reduce and manage the risk of disaster. Targets which Fiji has either achieved or is working towards include, firstly, reviewing our disaster risk management policies in order to include climate change and its effect on groups which are vulnerable and susceptible to the adverse effects of disasters. Such vulnerability is especially experienced amongst the young, women, and persons living with disabilities. Secondly, integrating disaster risk management and climate change to allow both issues to be addressed by one agency operating from one physical location. In this regard, a meeting in Fiji to establish a national platform for disaster risk management and climate change is scheduled for the 25th to the 29th of August 2014 to harmonize the two programs and to find mutual ground to maximize the effectiveness of their processes. Thirdly, by increasing the government's budgetary allocation for disaster risk reduction to address emergency response as well as rehabilitation. Fourthly, Fiji's new established Green Growth Framework, the benchmark for our government on environmental, economic, and social issues, includes climate change and disaster risk as thematic areas which are placed on an equal footing with 9 other issues. Fifthly, the offering of postgraduate qualifications in disaster risk management and climate change at 2 universities in Fiji, the University of the South Pacific and the Fiji National University. This contributes to the specialization of tertiary students in Fiji and in the Pacific region. Sixthly, the introduction of the comprehensive hazard and risk management process in disaster risk assessment outlined in Fiji's Green Growth Framework to complement environmental impact assessments and vulnerability assessments which are already in place. Madam Chair, in 2012, an entire village community was relocated from its traditional coastal location to higher ground. This was done as a joint venture between the Fijian government and the community. The relocation was necessary to reduce climate impacts that caused coastal erosion and flooding. In reality, more local communities are going to go through a similar process of relocation within Fiji. The increasing intensity and frequency of natural disasters, coupled with the ever-increasing cost of rehabilitation, remind us always that we can never be complacent and must always remain vigilant in our efforts. Fiji is therefore supportive of this preparatory process. In addition, like all other small island developing states, Fiji is actively engaging in the preparatory process that will culminate in the 3rd International Conference on Small Island Developing States to be held in Samoa in September of this year. In terms of the substantive elements of the post-2015 framework for disaster risk reduction, much of what we consider ought to be included are already outlined in the outcome document of the 6th session of the Pacific Platform for Disaster Risk Management, which was held in June of this year. Let me conclude by reaffirming that Fiji is firmly committed to improving our disaster risk management efforts and effectively responding to climate change impact. It is the only way to ensure the protection of our national sovereignty and to assure us of the sustainability of our livelihood and that of our children. Thank you.
I thank you, Madam Ambassador.